All right, Mr. Sharma. So, what would have been the takeaways from the panel?
I thought it was a good discussion because the panelists were so good, right? Each one of them is successful. They are hungry for doing more, and they brought out points essentially in three areas. One is, in this David versus Goliath battle that is inevitable for a startup, what should they do to be more successful? Then they talked about that how if you think of scale, not 2x scale, 3x scale, but 10x scale, which is what a successful startup especially has to think about. What is it that they bring to the table? So Mohit talked about how technology in his mind plays a role. I heard him saying that he sees himself as a technology company that happens to do logistics rather than a logistics company doing technology. And that's a wonderful way of looking at it. You heard Rahul, talk about how important it is to invest in people, have the right people. He is a good guy from a product perspective, but not good guy from a finance perspective and other areas, and how he must complement himself with the world-class people that are there. So I think we really heard very good insights from them, and these are very real insights because these are successful entrepreneurs. So I hope it will be useful to the audience.
All right, where are we heading? What's the future of startups?
I think there are, in some sense, you can say there are three types of startups, right? Mu Sigma is the poster child for one type of startups. These are services companies. Mu Sigma has come, relatively speaking, out of nowhere and become a big company. And they're much bigger than Mindtree, for example, although they're half their age. And they've done it in the same area that these services companies have operated in. And so that is one type of startups. The second type of startups are the Flipkart type of startups, right? They're focused on the India market. They are doing e-commerce, neighborhood commerce, something of that kind, focused on the Indian digital consumer. And they're offering something that was not possible to offer, 10 years back, 5 years back, right? Because internet penetration didn't exist. And the third type of companies are saying, look, we are truly global. We are not fighting in India, but we are fighting in the world. And InMobi is a great example of that. Although they're an international bronze winner, that's a very credible position to be in, because the gold and the silver is Google and Facebook, and you don't see them worrying about that. They draw energy from this and are focusing, even harder to become bigger than what they are. So I think we are seeing startups who are future InMobis, future Flipkarts, future Mu Sigmas, and I would say at this point in time, all the three have the potential to do well. The Mu Sigma, baby's Mu Sigmas will do well because we have a long history of IT services. And out of that, as that goes through a churn, as you know, is going through a churn, you will see more innovative companies emerge and they will seize new ground. Of course, the digital consumers base is growing very rapidly, so you'll see more companies which will target that. And India finally has a confidence to build tech companies out of India, which will be meaningful from a global perspective. So I think we are at a stage where we are going from not a conversation about having more startups, but about having more winners. Because ultimately, as a country, we will be measured by winners, not by, it's like sports, right? You can send a big contingent for swimming, but if they won no gold medal, it doesn't matter. I mean, you don't measure companies who go for Olympics by how big their contingent was. You measure them by how many gold medals or silver medals or bronze medals they won. So similarly, in the entrepreneur setup, you are not measured by how many companies you had. You are measured by how many winners you had, and especially global winners you had. And I think that is the shift that is taking place today. If you go back a year or two, we were still talking about, do we have enough companies? Now, of course, density of companies is not a problem. The problem that we have is, do we have enough winners? And that's a new class of a problem that needs to be solved by the ecosystem. And I'm cautiously optimistic that we will have, global winners out of the players that we have today.
Like China churning out the maximum number of PhDs and quality not being there.
Exactly, and so that is one. But also think of it differently, right? I mean, it is possible, and this is, I hope that is not a scenario that happens, but it is a possible scenario that 4 years from now, 5 years from now, you would say that between Flipkart and Amazon has won. This is a winner-take-all market. One of them will be a winner. And between Ola and Uber has won. Now you think of this, the second largest digital consumer base in the world will have will be served by Google, Facebook, Amazon and Uber. While China will have its own market leaders, US of course has its own companies. So we run the risk of being in a very, very awkward situation 4 years from now, because we may be just a market for other companies and we may have missed this opportunity of creating meaningful companies despite having the market. And frankly, this has happened, at least 3 times before to India. First, it has happened in telecom. Despite setting up CDOT and CDAC, and despite being one of the largest market in the world, our telecom operators are large guys, but we haven't built a telecom company. While even Sweden managed to build a telecom company when they started, seeing telecom service providers come up. And of course, Huawei, China is a very good example of that. So we are today dependent on foreign companies for our telecom needs, despite having a very large market. Then we saw that happen to pharma. Today there is no meaningful company, save for Biocon to some extent, which has any chance of becoming a pharma player. And now keep in mind that Pfizer, just one company in the US, the pharma player, their profit is more than top 100 for-profit hospitals in the US, right? So the point is, the money is in the drug business, and the drug business we haven't conquered. We've only done generics so far. So we have lost that battle. Dr. Reddy's lab tried and others have tried, but we haven't cracked it. Look at defense. We are the largest buyer of defense in the world, while small countries like Israel have built industries around defense. So we have in the past, despite having a large market, we have failed to create Indian companies that can supply that market. And this may then happen now to Digital India. And if it does happen to Digital India, the consequences, the ill effects of this will be worse than the ill effects of not having a telecom equipment company, not having defense, industry, and not having your own pharma industry. Because in the Digital India, all our data, emails, everything goes out. You are essentially a client state of some other company, not even a country. And we don't recognize this fully. So there are country consequences of not creating winners as we go forward. And I hope, therefore, we as a country don't lose the battle the 4th time.
Right. Mr. Sharma, that's exactly correct. You spoke on the lines of e-retail and e-commerce being the playground of startups right now, because that's where we see all the startups are emerging. And the talks are that e-retail, it is not sustainable. Let's take the example in the year 2018 when VCs would be pulling out or exiting from all the big names, e-retailers. What will happen then? And what's the future really for startups in the e-retail space?
And therefore, another way of saying it is they're bribing the consumer, right? So if I have to buy a phone, my preferred place to shop today is Flipkart. But if I find the phone cheaper on Amazon, I'll probably go and buy it on Amazon. You'll probably do the same, right? Now, traditionally, that has happened in the airline industry. I have to take a 6:30 flight, I fly Indigo and Jet, and if one is substantially cheaper, 1,000 rupees cheaper than the other, I will take the cheaper plane, right? I mean, that is our normal consumer behavior. Now, the problem is that this behavior also comes with the fact that there is no loyalty. Tomorrow, if the same thing was cheaper on Flipkart, I would go and buy on Flipkart, right? So it's not as if bribing leads to loyalty. And since bribing doesn't lead to loyalty, all that money goes waste. So I think the companies have to compete not on who can bribe more, but they have to compete on how do I create stickiness, either for merchants or for consumers. And to create stickiness, you got to do something that your competitor is not doing, right? And that has to be the focus. So startups win not because they have more money, but because they have more hustle or they have more innovation or both. And that has to be the focus of our companies. Now, why I worry to your question is that India has a history. As a country, we are our strength is also a weakness. Our strength is that we are open to new ideas, and therefore we are the unbroken culture over 5,000, 6,000 years. And because we assimilate good ideas, and make them our own. And sometimes, however, we also assimilate bad ideas. in mid 1980s, we assimilated an idea that the Britishers gave us that, look, we are here to save you guys because your culture needs saving, while the reality that Vivekananda told us was the reverse, right? Then after independence in 1950s, we embraced an idea that following 5-year plans and planning commission is the way forward to build a successful economy, right? Today we seem to be embracing an idea which is that somehow a company wins because it has more money, while there is no data to show that is the case. If you go to Silicon Valley, their whole premise is that, look, we are the people who let the underdogs win. So this New York money that is there, which is the hedge funds and private equity, they have managed to create a sense amongst our entrepreneurs saying that whoever has more money will win. Now, the moment that happens, then you are competing with Alibaba or Amazon. Of course, they have more money, so then the entrepreneur doesn't even fight them because it says, how can I fight them? They have more money, they will win. You know, because they've lost the psychological warfare in the beginning. So in e-commerce, I don't think this is true for global players, but in e-commerce, I fear that some of our entrepreneurs have lost the psychological battle already. Because now look, Amazon just announced that $5 billion. Why is our entrepreneurs not stepping up and saying, maybe you have $500 billion and I have only $500 million, but this is a game of asymmetric guy, the small guy winning, and I'm going to still beat you. Not one of them is saying that, because it is possible they don't even believe that in their mind. And if they don't believe it in their mind, then of course Amazon will win, right? So I think the biggest thing for us to worry about is, have we adopted a wrong idea about entrepreneurship, and that wrong idea will force us to fail, topple over in the face of, and that is not true for global companies, because global companies like Dhruva or InMobi, they don't have that feeling. They are comfortable facing the international players right from day one. They haven't been contaminated by that thinking, but our domestic entrepreneurs, I fear, have been contaminated by that thinking. So they are saying, I must have most money. If I have more money, I'll beat the smaller entrepreneur who's sitting next to me. But the flip side is, the moment they start thinking like that, then the bigger guy comes, and now when they see they have a bigger purse, they shrivel up and they don't compete. So we may then therefore end up with this bad scenario where 4 years out, you know, we would say it's Google, Facebook, Amazon and Uber. Gosh, what did we do with our country? We failed ourselves as Digital India.